gonna mute myself, Dale.
All righty. I've got it now. It's 6:01. I'm going to get started. Welcome to MELS 605. Thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you for being with us for the last 5 semesters and persevering and getting through this program. I'm quite sure that all of you are ready to be through and move on to the next phase of your career, seeing how this is a preparation program. So tonight I want to talk about how to take that next step. And so tonight's session is on interviewing, and I'm going to kind of dive right in. There are 4 types of interviews. They're all distinctly different, and they all serve a different purpose. So that's one of those things that the uninitiated don't understand. At different levels in this process, we're looking for different things. So there are 4 distinct levels. The first is the initial or pool applicant pool interview process, where we take a lot of people and we try to whittle them down to a manageable number by some process. That's the first one. The second one is the group interview process, where we bring in lay people who are not maybe administrators or even professional educators, so to see if you can communicate with lay people. Many times they'll bring in parents, community members, teachers, folks who may be not familiar with all the jargon of education, and see if you can communicate with them. The third level interview will be with the principal. This is where you get your chance to shine and use all the acronyms and all the knowledge that you've learned over the year and a half that you've been in this program, or 2 years. You get to use all that in that principal interview. And then the fourth interview is with the superintendent. And the superintendent's not going to ask you how to run a triple lunch shift in a 4x4 block. The superintendent's going to want to know big picture idea. Are you somebody that we could look toward to being a principal down the road? Otherwise, why would we hire you as an assistant principal? So let's talk about each of these 4 types. So the first type, again, is mostly dispositional. What they're doing in the group interview, in the first interview, where they're trying to take a group of you and cut you down, like applying for an applicant pool. What they're trying to do is figure out your distributional attributes. Are you the right kind of person to be in this business? They'll worry about your skill set later. First is we got to make sure that you have the right temperament or dispositional behaviors to be in this business. Are you honest? Are you ethical? Are you dependable? Those kinds of things. Are you on time? Are you courteous? Or do you have empathy? All the dispositional qualities that make you a good person. The Gallup organization has done a lot of work in that area. You've done some work in Strength Finder 2.0, which is part of that, where you have to self-assess what your strengths are and what your strengths aren't, so you can work on those kinds of things. Many districts are still using the Gallup principal perceiver process. Some of them use it for assistant principals. Most of them still use it for principals, but it's the same thing, where they're trying to determine if you're the right fit. Do you have the right temperament? What they don't want is, for you to be Barney Fife every time Andy Taylor would leave town on Mayberry and go to Raleigh, and you deputize the town drunk Otis or give Gomer a gun. You can't be doing dumb things like that. Are you that kind of person? Or are you going to be the type that first time the principal has to go to the principal's meeting, 2 or 3 times a month, principal's out of the building, the AP has to be in charge? Are you the kind of person that first time that happens, you're going to do something dumb like Barney, or wet your pants, or, can you deal with it? And so that's what they're trying to figure out in that very first cattle call interview, as I call it. Do you have the right dispositional behaviors? They're going to ask you things like, are you always on time? And the answer, of course, is yes. I'm always on time. It's kind of hard to, the school business is time driven. Bell ring, go to class, bell ring, go to next class. If you're not an on time person, I had a person come to interview for an assistant principal job one time in an early start high school and said, I'm not really a morning person. Well, then why are you here? That's not very smart to tell me you're not a morning person, and we're rolling out every morning at 6:15 and we're done at 2:15. That's not really smart. I'm forgetful, those kinds of things. And so they're going to ask you a series of these questions. Now, the problem with this type of interview, the whole point is to call people out, to get the numbers down manageable so that they don't spend a fortune on background tests and drug tests and those kinds of things. So if you get these questions wrong, and they're going to have landmine questions for you, like, are you always on time? Yes. There's no other answer than yes. If you answer anything other than yes, then you're out. And there's going to be several of those types of questions that the answer to. Now, the one that's the trickiest and the one that gives people this is the only one from your experiences in the MEL program that I think you might have trouble with, because it's not something that we can really change your opinion about. But they'll be asked a question somewhere along the lines of, if it paid exactly the same, listen carefully to the question now. If it paid exactly the same, would you rather be a teacher or a principal? If it paid exactly the same, or assistant principal? And the answer, of course, is assistant principal or principal. Please remember, you're looking to change careers here. You're moving from the teacher side of the desk to the administrator side. You're now going to be working with adults rather than students. If you say, man, if I could make the same, I'd stay in classroom forever, they'll let you, because it's two completely different jobs. You need to understand that you're applying to now to stop working with children and start working with adults. And you have to have a burning desire to do that. So they'll slip that one in there at some point. So you better answer, I want to be assistant principal. I want to work with adults. I have a burning desire to lead adults. I think I can make a difference with children through working with adults. So that better be the response that you give. And they'll ask you other things. Are you competitive? Yes, you are. We don't want people who are not competitive and don't believe in standardized test scores. I mean, why would you put one of them in charge of the school where scores count, where we keep score? We have a report card even for the schools. If you're one of those people that, they may ask you, what do you think about standardized testing? How well does it reflect what a child knows? You better make sure that, it may not, but it's, that's what we do in our business. And so it's going to be my goal to have the best test scores in the district. You better not be one of those people that, that believes that we ought not be giving tests or keeping score or every kid gets a trophy. You get a job over at the Parks and Rec, but not in the school business. So you better know that. That's a dispositional behavior, and you better know that. So that's kind of the first type of interview that you will have. You could also be given a reasoning activity like the principal's in basket. Let me see if I can pull that one up. Here it is, where they'll ask you to make reasoned decisions on scenarios that you give you. Be careful about these in terms of law and policy. There's one in here from a reporter who wants to come and do a story on the new administrator, the new assistant principal, the new principal, and maybe interview some teachers and talk to some kids and get them on camera. All media requests go to who? Your public information office. You got to know that. We don't allow people on public school campuses. You notice when something happens, unfortunately tragic at a school, and the news media is there, they're always talking to parents in cars, and they're always out on the side of the road. Well, there's a reason why. We don't allow them on campus. And you don't speak to any media unless it's been vetted or you've been given permission through the public information office, whether you're assistant principal, teacher, or otherwise. You're not allowed to do that. Such a tragedy yesterday at UNC Charlotte. It was incredible. I live just north of town here at Lake Norman. And it's just an incredible tragedy in this region. And the first thing I saw on the news last night, they had a lady talking about the shooting that was involved. She was on campus, but she was an adjunct instructor. You notice there was no full-time instructors. That means she doesn't actually work for the university. And she may not have that adjunct job anymore once this gets out, because we don't speak to the media. Everything's got to go through the public information office. And I thought next time we'll see her, she'll be a former adjunct at UNC Charlotte, because she spoke to the media without it being vetted through the public information office. We're not allowed to do that. So a lot of these, look at these scenarios in this one. And most of these are kind of commonsensical thing, but they'll give you some sort of reasoning activity. The thing in the reasoning activity to be looking for, the thing to pay attention to, is the legal scenarios like access to kids, FERPA, letting media take pictures of kids, videos. We know all that stuff's verboten. That's forbidden. Can't do those kinds of things. So make sure that you keep an eye toward the legal things when you're doing your reasoning activities, and you'll be fine. So that's the principles in basket activity. The other type of first interview may be virtual. This is for the larger districts like Charlotte, Wake, that have an applicant pool are now doing virtual. The first one is virtual. I have a document here that's a synopsis of that. These are the questions that Charlotte Mecklenburg asked last year. What past experiences made you qualified for this position? Describe a time where you were under immense pressure. How'd you respond? They always ask about that time where you faced, even on references, a significant challenge. They want to make sure you didn't wet your pants. Is basically what they're trying to find out. You know, how were you able to handle it? Did you freak out, or were you able to remain calm and work through it? That's what they're looking for. Some people believe EL students can't learn. What are your thoughts? That goes back to that. Are there beliefs that you have that you will not change, that like all kids can learn? See, that's kind of the common theme of the school business, is all kids can learn. Now, not at the same time and not at the same rate, but all of them can learn. So that's a value system. That goes back to dispositions. They'll hit you up with that. They'll have you do a data analysis just like you did in the app cell. Be just like that. What we had you do, look at your standardized scores, find gaps, and think about what you do to try to fix it. They'll have you do that. She had a video of a 9th grade English class and had to take notes. What did the teacher do right? Back to Marzano. Did she question and clue? Cooperative learning. Same thing that we learned in the AppTel. Marzano's 9. They'll give you a video, and you were looking for best practices. Same thing that you did in your walkthroughs when you did the AppTel. If there was a system policy you didn't agree with, again, back to, they're trying to figure out if you know the law and if you'll follow it. What's the hierarchy? When you're an administrator, federal law comes first, then state law, local board policy, best practice, and then teacher input. Those are your five points of your rationale that you always follow. Again, they're going to want to know, in the reasoning activity, usually the catch on that one is something legal, but they're going to ask you if there's a policy you don't agree with, are you going to enforce it anyway? And the answer, of course, is yes, because you have been through 603 and federal law, state law, local board policy, best practices, teacher input is what guides your decision making as a principal. That's it says, like it says in red here, that's one of those landmine questions. You better believe it is. They want to make sure that you don't go off on your own like Barney did and Andy left town. Next thing you know, he had a militia out, rousting the citizenry. It kind of, went crazy. They'll make sure that you don't do something like that. Describe something you initiated at your school back to any of your plans, your marketing plan, your action plan, your professional growth plan. They want to know that. Describe a time when you face criticism. They want to know if you're thick-skinned enough or not to do this. Share anything that not in your resume, not covered. You only get 10 seconds to gather your thoughts, then you have about 3 minutes to give your personal appeal. Don't make it so braggadocio when you get to tell them anything else about how wonderful you are, It should be more about how you want to be a servant leader. So here is the trilogy for that last one there. She also said put notes around your screen. Always make sure you're facing the screen when you're communicating with them, even if it's just a blank screen and they're recording on your end. Make sure you're looking at your screen. But you should, if they give you the chance to talk about who you are, here are the three things that I think you should always make sure that you highlight. Number one, servant leadership. I want to be a servant leader. I want to be a transformational leader, not a transactional leader. I believe that leadership is a verb rather than a noun. That means it's about what I do rather than just the title. So it should be about shared governance, but being a servant leader. Number two is integrity. I will always operate with integrity. That's important. I think that's what they're trying to figure out, if you'll do the right thing. And the third is I have built my life on a foundation of faith. I will not bring that into daily life because there may be people who have questions because you matriculated at Gardner-Webb, a Christian university. There may be people who have questions or who may ask you that. And the answer is yes, I will live my life. I live my life with a foundation of Christianity, but I understand the limits of that when I come to work every day in a public school environment. You may want to address that as well if you feel like that there's some question about if you went to a Christian university. Now, some people think that's wonderful. Other people may have concerns. You might want to address that. All right, so that's kind of the first round of interviews. That's what you're expecting to have to go through. Mostly, they're trying to determine what kind of person you are. Are you the right fit for this business? And so that's the first one. The second round of interviews is the group-led interview. It's a PowerPoint, and basically, it's you converting all the jargon and acronyms that we've taught you over the last 2 years into plain folks speak, where you can communicate with non-professional administrators. And so instead of asking, how you're going to organize for instruction, you say, well, I'm going to do PLCs. Briefly describe what you put. Instead of saying my leadership style is shared governance and transformational to this group of lay people, you would say things like this. These are the definitions of transformational leadership and shared governance. This is the tenets of those. Now, it would be easier and faster to say I'm a transformational leader who believes in shared governance and strives to be a servant leader, but now they don't know what those terms mean. So you're going to have to explain it to them. Earning respect and trust of parents, teachers, students by making consistent and appropriate decisions, child-centered, focus on issues. You're going to have to spell it out for them. Assessment drives instruction. Instead of saying we're going to organize in PLCs and use best practices, you're going to say we're going to do data analysis, development of teaching strategies based on the needs of students, and willingness to plan collaboratively. That I could have said PLC and it means the same thing, and we'd all know what we mean, but parents won't. And so this whole slideshow is about how you take all the jargon that you have learned in the time that you've been with us and in your time in education, and you translate that back down. Remember a time when you didn't know all these things, when you were new, and you're going to be able to speak. And don't say things like, well, you won't understand that, or say something like EVOS. Oh, you don't know what that means. Let me explain it. Because that's the same as calling them stupid. I set up last year. I set up in a district. I set up their principal of the year interviews, and we had 3 candidates for principal of the year come in, and we had a panel, and it was me because I had set it up, and we had a local pastor, and we had a couple of other people who were local community people. One was a parent, and she was there in the role of a parent. But what the principals didn't know is she was actually an attorney, and every time we had one young man in, and every time he would say something, he would use an acronym But then, oh, you don't understand that. And when he left, the first thing the attorney looked at me and said, how many times did he call me stupid? I said, I believe I counted 6. So needless to say, he was not the winner of the competition. But he's a young principal. He needs some more seasoning in terms of how to deal with people in terms of the acronyms and those kinds of things when you're dealing with groups. But I remember my first group principal interview about 30 years ago. I guess it'll be 30 years ago next year, my first principal interview. And there was a board member there. There was a teacher there, and then there was one person from the central office, some random person, and the other 3 people were parents. And I had to make sure that I geared my comments so that I didn't leave the parents behind. And so that's what group interviewing is about, is making sure you know who they are and don't use all your jargon. Speak in terms that everybody can understand. So that's the level 2 interview, the group interview. The level 3 interview is the principal-led interview. Here's where you get your chance to shine. This is when you get to go in and just tell them everything you know. They ask you all these professional, tell us about your background, what's your professional work experience, why do you want to be an administrator, what are your professional goals, and you're basically talking now, the inside stuff. You can use acronyms, PBIS, Power School, EVOS, MTSS. You can use all of your acronyms because the principal knows all this stuff. And you can really, most folks get real comfortable. You get your chance to shine, and then they get you. You get overconfident, and they ask you the trick question. You get feeling comfortable, and they ask you that trick question that gets you. And it's the landmine question for the principal interview is, tell us about your strengths and weaknesses. They slip that one in after about 20, 25 minutes of a 30-minute interview, and you're feeling good and full of yourself because you get to use all those terms that you learned in this program, and you're just coasting right along, and you let your defense down. They ask you that question just in the context of a normal conversation, and you just, you wet the bed. That's the end of it. So here's how you answer that question. Very simple. Your strength should always be dispositional. I'm honest, I'm ethical, I'm hardworking, I'm on time, I'm fair. All the things that you learned in that strength finder, all the things that the dispositional things that matter, you need to highlight those as your strengths. You're a fully formed adult. Those things aren't going to change. They can depend on you every day. You will be there. 2 or 3 times a month, your principal has to leave and go to a district-wide meeting. You will be a steady hand on the helm, on the ship, and that you know how to operate in the school environment. So your strength should always be disposition. Your weaknesses should also all be based on inexperience. That means they can change. That means they can improve. Things like, I know that I've not got certified to do formal teacher observations in this district yet, but as soon as I get this job, that's my first goal, is I'm going to get certified to do observation. That when you get hired, you're going to put a burden on the staff that hires you, because most districts require you to be trained to do formal observations. And until you get trained, you can't you can't do your rounds and pull your weight in terms of teacher observations, and it puts a burden on the others. And so you need to acknowledge that everything that's your weakness, I have seen, you can say, I've seen Power School, or I've seen the data collection system from the teacher portal, but I understand the administrative portal is much more involved than what I'm doing. It has all these discipline modules and grades, test scores, and all these other things, but I'll go get trained immediately. Everything that you tell them is a weakness should be easily correctable very soon. I've seen EVOS from the teacher portal that talked about my students. I've not seen it and I've only seen it, the screen, the principal screen or the AP screen, but I understand that there's a lot more to it. EVOS for me has been do 85% of my students make growth. I understand for administration, just do 85% of the teachers, and also tells us how well certain teachers do with certain types of kids. I understand that. I'm clearly inexperienced, but I will work on that and I will fix it immediately. So that's don't get so comfortable where you say something like, "Boy, I hate to get up early in the morning. I really like sleeping in on Saturday." Well, they tricked you into telling on yourself. So your strengths are always dispositional, which means I'm a fully formed adult. These things won't change. I can be depended upon. Your weaknesses are always based on experience that can be fixed quickly. That's what, what is your greatest professional strength and weakness? That's what I'm telling you. That they're always going to slip that one in, and you better be ready for it, because that's the landmine in the principal-led interview. And then last but not least, keep an eye on our time here. Last but not least is the superintendent interview. Now, Dr. Stone may differ with this, but when I was in the assistant superintendent or deputy superintendent role, where I had to hire principals for the district, I looked for people who they'd already been through this other stuff. Now I'm looking to see, can you get your head up now from down at the grindstone and pulling the wagon? Can you look up and see the big picture? Why are we here? What is the big picture? What should we be here for? And you should get questions about 21st century skills and abilities, because that's where we're headed. We're in the 21st century. We're nearly 20 years in now. So we better be well versed in the big picture things, the big idea things. There's a wonderful document in here, because the superintendent is going to ask you a really tough question. All right, you know what the 21st century skills are. Obviously, how are you going to implement them? And then that's this wonderful document in here that was written by Jeff Craig tells you, of course, it reviews what they are, but it has a step-by-step 6-step process to implement 21st century skills in your building. So that's the kind of thing. And then the superintendent might say to you, well, what do you expect the outcome to be? And that's when you say these things from future ready students. The state of North Carolina has already determined what a student ought to look like, that we have taught and made sure that they had 21st century skills. The state of North Carolina has already said this is what they'll look like, and this is what they'll be able to do. So you should know that. And there'll be other big ticket items, but the big things, the issues in education. Now, I'd stay away from very controversial things. Like, I doubt the superintendent would ask you, but the superintendent might ask you something like, what do you think about Common Core? And the answer is I think it's a fine way to make sure that our children, are globally competitive or nationally competitive, and whatever the content is, it's our job to deliver it. Because what you need to understand at the principal level, you're a middle level manager. They're not going to be asking you to make decisions about what you ought to be teaching. You're all about delivery, how to teach. That's why you're in teachers' classrooms every day. That's your job as a middle level manager. We want your eyes up and seeing the big picture, but don't get carried away with some, political crusade against this or for that kind of thing. You're about delivery, and you're about following out with fidelity, the goals, the objectives, the programs of the district, that you're making sure that if they say do this and do it this way and do it now, that you do it this way and you do it now. That's one of the things the superintendent is looking for. They're trying to make sure that we don't have some sort of a zealot here that's going to go off, on their own and not follow what the directives and the direction, the strategic plan for the district. That's what they're trying to figure out.
Dr. Lamb, can I add something?
Yes, I want you to.
Oh, good. One of the things that when I was hiring for a principalship or an assistant principalship, and I was involved in that, but it really, like Dr. Lamb mentioned, before it ever got to me, you've been vetted by several
Mm-hmm.
people. So it's really, I'm really choosing between the cream of the crop as a superintendent. And Dale is absolutely correct. I may ask you about Common Core, but it is basically to get an understanding of whether or not you know what it is. I know you can't change Common Core. I can't change Common Core. We live with Common Core. So as Dr. Lamb said, always in my thinking, put a spin to it. It's about the children. And when I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting through an interview and someone doesn't mention that they are about the children or they love children,
Mm-hmm.
I usually am keeping a tally of every time someone says it. And I don't say it 20 times, but if you haven't said that at the beginning and at the end, you've missed an opportunity, because that's really what our job's all about. The other thing I want to mention too is as someone who's hired principals and just like Dr. Lamb, I am always going to ask you about your people skills.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get into that principalship, does not make you God. It does not make you the boss of all bosses. And so the transition from assistant principal or teacher to assistant principal to principal, you've really got to take your personality to understand that you are really a servant leader. You
Mm-hmm.
are not God. And you, just because you got this title of principal doesn't make you all powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that will soon quickly turn on you, if you go into this notion that I'm the principal and you're the teacher, people will know that you don't remember what it was like.
Yeah.
And then you start losing them. You lose them big time, and the culture of your school will go down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the thing that has bothered me the most in the principals that I've hired, is they forget where they come from, and they get to the point where they think that just because now that I'm the principal that it's all about me. It isn't. It just means that you are the leader, but you are also the follower. You've got to make sure you got to read your staff, and you got to keep your staff happy. Because I looked at two things when I evaluated principals. How are you doing academically? Is your school performing? Do you know exactly what your schools are doing? And the other thing I always look at is the culture of the school. Is this a happy place to be? Do the kids
Mm-hmm.
like coming? Do the parents like coming? Do the teachers like coming? Those are the two biggies for me whenever I evaluated someone. So
Yeah.
you may be the smartest person in the world, but if you go into a principalship and you treat people like you don't want to be treated by your principal, it is going to come back to haunt you.
Mm-hmm.
It will get to the superintendent very quickly. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Lamb.
Thank you. So what Dr. Stone has just outlined for you is the difference between being a transformational leader and a transactional. Transactional leader, it's all about the position. It's about me. Transformational leadership, of course, is about being a servant leader. It's all about you. It's all about how I can help you, how I can serve you. And so that's why I said we've moved that now, because smart people like Dr. Stone have figured out. We better figure that out first and all. We better know that about you before we get to your skill set and your resume and all of that. We're now putting that first in the process. It used to be not even in the process or last. Now it's first, because now it's become, as Dr. Stone said, that's the most important thing is your disposition. Are you the right kind of person? Do you think that that principle is a noun, or do you know that principle is supposed to be a verb? It's supposed to show action and do stuff, rather than it's look at me, I've got my best suit on and it's all about me. You've got to let people know that that you want to be a transformational servant leader, and in the end, that's why I said, if you're one of those people that believe every kid gets a trophy, that we shouldn't be keeping score, then you're not about kids. You want to see kids succeed. You want your school to succeed, both academically, socially, intellectually, as a part of the community, a hub for your community. You care about outcomes. Caring about outcomes means you care about kids. But as I said earlier, somewhere you need to slip in there that you believe all children can learn. That should be your number. That should be your number one. When they say, do you have some belief, as I said earlier, do you have some belief about the school business you'll never change? What's your core principle about school? I believe every kid can learn. It's our job to find a way to do it. Maybe not at the same rate, maybe not at the same time, but every child can learn. Again, Dr. Stone says back to children, but again, we're looking for good people in this business. and that's got to shine through. All the knowledge that we can give you is important, but the good people part's got to shine through there as well. And so that leads me to, I guess, my last thing um, that I have for you here. Dale's top 10 for job interviews. People say, you must be an egomaniac. Says Dale, students named this. I did years ago. And so here's the things that I believe are important. Dress for success. Take your 2-page evidence summary, or take an electronic version of your competency folio that has the actual work, one or other or both. They don't want to see your evidences. They're not going to sit and read through those 6 evidences. They would, like a 2-page summary, if they ask if you had that. Most folks now know that we're doing evidence artifacts, and so when we first switched over to evidence artifacts rather than an exam, people didn't really understand and want to know what they were about. So you can do kind of a 2-page summary of the 6 evidences you did, and you've got your competency folio. You can publish and share it that actually has things that you generated from the work that you did. One of the things, how do you get experience without getting the job? It's the old chicken and the egg kind of thing. Well, during your internship, you got a lot of good experiences, and we had you collect up artifacts that were proof of those experiences. You can publish and share that electronically. So make sure that you take that with you, because that's in, just like those 5, there's a document in there, the 5 things you need to bring. One of them is a resume, your references, but also your portfolio of kind of work example. That's one of those things. Research both the school and the administration. Look at the state report card, teacher working condition survey, advanced ed survey in South Carolina. Know the backgrounds of all the administrative team. Know what you're walking into. Know what the problems is, the issues there. You need to be knowledgeable about where you could fit in that organization. Know what you don't know. And these are things, again, EVOS, Power School, Power Source, RTI. Know that that you haven't gotten trained maybe from the administrative side, but you know what those things are, and you know that you need to go do those things. The thing that scares us most about applicants is when they don't know what they don't know. They think they're the smartest person, and they're the dumbest, and that you don't want to deal with those people. You do not want to deal with those people. We'd rather have people know, I haven't had experience, but I know I need to do this, 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 and this. Know what you don't know. You know what things you need to work on, and be able to speak to instruction in the bottom line, which is student achievement, as Dr. Stone said. We're all about kids and achievement. We want them to do better. We're not a daycare. We're not just there for them to have a good time and play ball and be wonderful, and we want them to be successful through their achievement. That's how we want to express ourselves professionally. We want our kids to do well. We're all about kids and them doing well. It's not just about warehousing. Have a humorous anecdote about how you were able to turn a negative into a positive, because they're always going to ask you when you were under pressure or something bad, how'd you handle it? Always have a humorous anecdote how you were able to work through that. Be prepared to discuss hours and responsibilities honestly. I went to Hickory Grove in September. I was on my way to Fayetteville. I stopped there to see some of my interns. It was September. I tell you, it was September. That's obviously important to the story. I went through. There was the bulletin board out front at the elementary school. Welcome to the new faculty members. I know her. I trained her when she was wanting to be an AP. So I go in and I see the principal. Aquanetta, how are you? Everything's wonderful. Oh, home week. Get to go back and see all my friends. I go in and say, how's she doing? I've already let her go. It's not even cold weather yet. Said, we're a late start because of the Head Start program next door. We got 2 campuses at Hickory Grove. One's one of the old, still 3 remaining federal Head Start programs in Charlotte and Mecklenburg. It's a full-fledged school, 800 students. Got an elementary school right next to it, 1,100 students. Can't get everybody in all at the same time. Traffic, buses, and all that. So they, the Head Start program starts every morning on regular time, and then an hour later, a late start school, Hickory Grove. So that means that if you start later, you have to go longer. And so they didn't let out till 4:30, and faculty couldn't leave until 4 to 5. Administrators shouldn't leave until 5. And so as soon as the lady took the job, waited until school started, and then first day that school was in, told her principal, I have to leave at 4 o'clock to pick up my children every day. You knew this was an early start school when we started here. Yeah. And so she said, well, I'm going to let you leave 4 o'clock every day. You don't have to come. And so that was the end of that for her. And that was kind of the end of her career. And so a couple of things that are truisms. There's a time-space continuum. You're going to be at one place at one time. You have to understand that. And part of that goes into the school won't get any closer to your house just because you took the job, and the traffic won't get any better. Those are truisms, folks. You can't be late every day. Well, it was bad traffic. Well, you should have planned for that. I got to be on main campus tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Now, if I'm late, it's not a big deal, but it's insulting to the person that I have a meeting with if I show up late. Now, I'm at the Lake Norman house today, so I'm going to have to leave. I'll leave right around 6 o'clock, maybe a few minutes before. It's an hour and 15-minute drive if I'm driving at 3 o'clock in the morning, but at 7, at that time of day, if I leave at 6, it'll take me about 2.5 hours. If I leave at 7, it'll take me 3 hours. That's just the way the world works, folks. Showing up late's not the solution. Well, traffic was bad. Well, you knew there was going to be traffic. So I'll leave in the morning at 6. I'll get there in time to, check my email and do some things after driving that long before I have my 9 o'clock meeting in the morning. Now you say, but Dale, you set that up yourself. You could put that later in the day. Well, no. That's just my penalty for being here today. You have to understand those kinds of things. But you got to you got to be honest with yourself. Oh, I've never been a morning person, but if I get this job, I promise I'll get up early every day. No, you won't. No, you won't. You will for a little while, but then it'll pass. Trust me, it'll pass. And then you'll be that person that shows up late or tardy and always got excuses. Don't be that person. So be honest with yourself about hours and responsibility. Know your strengths and weaknesses. We talked about that before because you're going to be asked. Your strengths are always dispositional. I'm honest, I'm forthright, I'm hardworking, I believe in kids. I'm dependable, yada, yada, yada. My weaknesses are inexperience. Don't try to discuss salary, experience steps, national board pay, etc. One of the reasons why I had you go in 603 and interview your HR people was to find out, the principal doesn't know about stuff. All the benefits, including pay, are handled through the HR department. I should never ask that in the interview with the principal or with the school personnel. If I'm interested in that, I should book an appointment with the HR people and ask them about that. So don't get involved with that at the school level. They don't handle that. Don't engage in gossip or negative talk. Believe it or not, folks share information and talk to one another. And then number 10 is my last one, and this is my pet peeve. Do not interview for a job you wouldn't take, just to get the experience. So you'll know what questions they're going to ask when you go to school that you really want to go to. Do not do that. The principal's job is to find the best person for their school and the kids in their school. The principal's job is not to get you interviewing experience. Don't ever go. I've had people walk in and say, I'd never work here. That's just, this school's way too rough for me. I just want to get the experience interviewing, which means I want you to tell me what questions they're going to ask in Charlotte Meck in an AP interview. So when I go to the good side of town, I'll know what to tell them. That's not my job. My job is to be an advocate for my school as principal and advocate for our children. And we're trying to find the best people that we can find. My job's not to get you experience. So if you know that you'd never work there, do not do that. Don't go over and interview there. The word will get out on you doing things like that. So if you know that school's too far, I'm not willing to move, I'm not willing to fight that traffic, yada, 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 I'm not willing to do it, then do not go and interview at that place. just for the experience. That's being professionally disingenuous. That's one of those dispositional things that causes me to not want to trust you and give you the opportunity for a job. That's just my pet peeve. Also, in that same document, I won't bother to go over it tonight because my time is up. I have 10 things that you should be able to do by the time your first faculty meeting once you get your AP job. I've got them listed out there. So that's kind of the corollary. Here are the things for your 10 things you better make sure you can do at your interview, and here's the 10 things because you're going to be successful. Once you get your job, here's the 10 next things you need to do. Because I have faith in you. I already believe it. So I went ahead and put them on the same document. Because one's just going to lead right into the other. You got to have faith. You got to believe. Dr. Stone, I made it in 45 minutes as I told you I could.
Yes, you did, Dr. Lamb. And this is, by the way, all under week 15 in your Blackboard. So this is the session for tonight. Those of you, there are 2 or 3 of you who haven't finished up with Task Stream. That clock is ticking. We need to get that done. So please do that right away. I think there's only 2 of you. And if there's something you're missing, just give me a call tomorrow, email me, and we'll try to help you make you through that. So thank you, Dr. Lamb. Any questions, Dr. Lamb, or before because this is it. We're going to zoom out. I will see you next week, next Thursday at 6 o'clock, our last meeting.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Good night.
Thank you.
Where do we put the reflection?
The reflections, Dr. Lamb, did you hear that?
Yes. Where do you put the reflections?
Yes.
You email them. If he doesn't have a Dropbox, you just email them.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're in discussion board. They're the very last thing in discussion board.
There should be a Dropbox for him, but if you would email it to me, I would appreciate that too. I'm collecting that. I'm the one looking at all of those. That helps me greatly. I appreciate it.
But in Blackboard, look on page 2 of Blackboard discussion board. That's where you can download it.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Stone.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Bye, DJ. Bye, Katie.